What the fuck happened to SOCOM Confrontation? After being shut down by Sony in January of 2014, this game was brought back to life 7 years later in January of 2021. The reception of Confrontation was very well received, even if it did have some server issues. All in all, the experience was great and the community was glad to have it back in their lives. People were searching for their old PS3s, and others were flocking to used game stores or going online trying to find a console just so they could relive their glory days.
Let's see. Oh! An operation completed. Let's see. I'm on!
Even myself, who was not a big fan of this game back in 2008, due to the changed mechanics and different playstyle from the originals, was having more fun than I ever imagined possible. I felt like a young kid experiencing SOCOM again for the first time. Times were great and the community was happy. At the beginning, it was incredible seeing the amount of people who came back to play. On average, there would be over 200 players in the evenings, and at one point I believe I saw about 700 players at an all-time peak. It was insane. Fast forward to today, roughly 18 months later, and the servers seem to have plummeted. At one time you could expect to see up to 200 players in the evenings to now a nightly average of about 40 to 50 players. Now I'm a reasonable man, and I fail to see a problem with a nightly average of 40 to 50 players, especially on a PlayStation 3 game that Sony abandoned. But how did the player average cut down to about a quarter of what it was? Well, I think there's a lot of factors to it. Firstly, I never expected this game to maintain a several hundred player average. I knew it would level out, and it seemed to have leveled at that 150 to 200 player average because it was consistently in that range for a long time. So here are the reasons I personally think the player base has dropped down below that 200 player average. When SCON first came back, 99% of the community was playing it casually, including myself, and having a great time. Not many people were really good at the game and were just here for a good time. As time went on and the novelty began to wear off, people started getting better and began to take it more seriously, as expected. A few months in and they added a highly requested feature, Ranked Mode. This sounds great, right? Ranked Mode gives people a reason to keep playing. Who doesn't like to compare themselves to everyone else? Most people do. But I think this had a severely negative effect to the player base that nobody expected. The game started to get sweaty. Clans started to stack sides, and casual players were being driven away because nobody likes to play against the side of all clan players who are basically esport pros. This is something I experienced personally many times, but one night in particular really stood out to me. I hopped on with a few of my buddies and all of us were really just casually playing, trying to have a good time, and before I knew it, a particular clan joined my room and stacked the other side. Soon my side was all casual players, and the opposing team was a full clan of sweats who were communicating and just giving it 110%. We got rolled up 0-6 probably 3 matches in a row before we got fed up and said this is ridiculous. This is something that happened unfortunately. The really good players befriend the other really good players and they play with each other and the casual players lose, because if you're on the other team you have no chance. Casual players, including myself, are just here to have a good time. As the player base began to dwindle down, the casual players either became the really good players or they left the game because it's no longer fun for them. I don't want to sound like I'm whining because I don't need to win to have a good time. I'd rather be on a losing team in a competitive match than be on a winning team who's just slaughtering the other team. I don't know how anyone enjoys that. Confrontation. Yeah, this is sadly an issue the game had back in the server days, which has reared its ugly head today. In SCON, matches can take an eternity because some players are too scared to lose. They would rather take a draw than the L. And one of the most frustrating things I've experienced is when a team will rush to pick up the bomb and then camp with it with seemingly no intentions to ever plant it. Sometimes they'll even hide on top of a one-way ladder for the whole round. There's not much more frustrating than dying and then watching a single player hide with the bomb 1v5 for 5 minutes. I'd rather just lose the round. Are there other reasons the player base might be dropping? I'm sure there is. but if you have opinions, please let me know in the comments. Is SCON doomed? I don't think so. I feel there are avenues to help the player base grow. It may not ever get back to that 200 player average, but I believe it can get back to over 100 players per night. The easiest way is for Confrontation to come to PC via the emulator. This is a touchy subject to some players because some people think it should stay on console, but I feel that's unrealistic, and look where that got the player base to now. Emulator just gives players another route to play, whether it's you don't have access to a PlayStation 3 or you already have a PC and you don't want to go backwards in time. Let's look at SOCOM 2 as an example. That game can be played on a PS2, backwards compatible PS3, an Xbox Series X, a Steam Deck, or a PC. I've personally witnessed that player base grow over the past year, and oftentimes it has more players than SCON does on a given night. That's just a perfect example of if you give people more ways to play, you'll pull in more people, and that's good for the community regardless of your feelings of Confrontation on PC. I'm not saying SCON on emulator the definitive save, but it's a good option. We all know that SCON on emulator has been in the works, and I oftentimes get asked if there's been any updates. Unfortunately, the most recent update was on June 5th, 2022, when Snake came out and said they're nearing a point of opening up the emulator to more testers. At the time, I felt we were really close, but nearly 4 months later, it's been crickets. I don't know what's happening on the emulator front. I wish they would be more transparent so the community knows what to expect, but that hasn't been the case. I assume they're working on it behind the scenes, but it's anyone's guess. Another way to help the player base is something that has already been started. While I haven't experienced this personally, I do hear people complain about the mod staff. I'm not being critical of them due to not experiencing this firsthand, but it seems to be a pretty common point of contention that the community does not trust the server staff, which is simply bad for morale. At the beginning, when a player got banned, nobody questioned it, and in general people even applauded it because they felt the mods had the good of the community and game at heart. Now people feel that some players have been banned for bogus reasons, which, again, I am not fully up to date on, so I won't comment on specifics. But some people feel they have been banned for talking back to server mods and other small infractions, which I personally feel is bad for the server, depending on context of course, and just prevents the growth of the community. Another thing that I think is bad is when a player gets banned for supposedly cheating, but is not given what proof the mod had for banning that person. I am a believer of a player should be able to make their case and be able to confront the person who banned them and be able to see the reason for the ban. Obviously, if a person is cheating, they should be banned, plain and simple. But if it's ambiguous or not very clear, you need to allow that person to explain their case in case it's not as it seems. I think the biggest thing for growing the community would be an influx of new casual players. More casual players bring other casual players back and people have fun. I have my most fun when I'm playing with some buddies and we're just chilling, not really caring who's winning or losing or what their KD or rank is, but just having a good time. I think the emulator would help with this problem, and I think this is the single most helpful thing that could happen to Confrontation. To wrap things up here, I'm not saying SCON is dead, because it's not. This isn't a eulogy, and I think it can and will have a long lifespan. This is just my thoughts on the current state of the game and what can be done to help the community grow. As long as there's players who love the game, there will always be a community. Whether they're the single room with 10 players or multiple rooms spanning hundreds, I don't think SCON is going anywhere. If you agree with the things I said here, or disagree, please let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. That helps me grow and helps this video reach more viewers, which can in turn bring more people back to the community who didn't even know this game was revived in the first place. If you want more content, hit that subscribe button and help support the channel directly by becoming a member and get some awesome emotes and badges. I appreciate your support.
Green up. Damn, I haven't said that in a fucking long time. Green up, boys.